The centaurs are four-legged creatures who have elements of both equine creatures as well as humans, with a lower body that resembles that of a horse and an upper body that has similarities to that of a human's. Similar to Char, much of the centaur culture emphasizes the importance of war and strength. Centaurs are considered one of the strongest and most ferocious of any race in Tyria, and that can be demonstrated with their prowess on the battlefield. Across the world, several tribes of centaurs can be seen inhabiting different areas. There are 6 specific tribes known to have existed: the Wildrunner of Elona, the Losaru of the Crystal Desert, the Maguma of the Maguma, the Hrathi of the Maguma, the Tamini of the Shiver Peaks, and the Modnir of the Shiver Peaks. The Wildrunner of Elona is a relatively peaceful faction of centaurs found predominantly near the ancestor tree in Korna. Elonian centaurs believe their ancestor trees were the spirits of their forebears who were watching over them, and the tree's fruits served as a way to gain the knowledge of their ancestors. Historically, the humans of Elona and the centaurs of Elona were at conflict with each other as various skirmishes and the enslavement of the other race occurred. During the events of Nightfall, the various other tribes of Elona were enslaved by Varish Asa, and most of the remaining centaurs joined the Wildrunner. While they did distrust humans because of their history, they did support those who they deemed as allies, such as how the centaur Zed Shadowhoof helped the Sunspear Spear Marshal Cormyr bring an end to Nightfall. Unfortunately, the Wildrunner also faced threats from Palava Joko, who continuously enslaved many of the Elonian centaurs and even awakened some of them. In the events following Nightfall, and during Palava Joko's conquest of the entirety of Elona, all the centaurs in the land were completely wiped out, with the only legacy of these now extinct people being that their bones make up the structure of Joko's Bone Palace. The Losaru of the Crystal Desert are a relatively small tribe, with their most predominant characteristic being how some of their tribe were known to eat human flesh. Similar to the Wildrunner, this group of centaurs are now extinct as they were completely wiped out by Palava Joko as he expanded his empire northwards into the Crystal Desert, with their only lasting legacy being that their bones share the structure of the Bone Palace, alongside the Wildrunner. The Maguma of the Maguma are a tribe of peaceful centaurs that reside in various settlements in the Maguma Wastes. Historically, the only tribe of centaurs that existed in this region of the world were the Hrathi centaurs, but a schism occurred within the tribe where there was a separation in ideology. The new Maguma tribe separated themselves from their ever-increasing warlike and aggressive brothers and headed west to reclaim their ancestral beliefs of peace and harmony. One centaur, the Hrathi, fought the humans but gave up that way of life to pursue beliefs similar to that of the newfound Maguma tribe, but without joining the tribe itself was Ventari. Ventari founded a refuge within the Maguma Wastes that sheltered both humans and centaurs that were hurt by their conflict and sought peace. As the Crichton Civil War began and conflicts in the region began to rise again, Ventari escaped south to avoid the conflict and befriended a former member of the Shining Blade known as Ronan. Ronan had previously discovered a large mysterious seed in a cave guarded by large plant creatures. After having taken one of the seeds, he hoped to show it to his daughter, but his family was killed by the Mersat. Years later, Ronan and Ventari founded a sanctuary within the Maguma jungle and planted the seed on the graves of Ronan's family. The seed sprouted, and from it grew a tree that would later grow into the Pale Tree, who is the mother of all Savari. Ventari died over 100 years later, and in his final moments he wrote down his life experiences on what would become known as Ventari's Tablet, to which when the firstborn of the Savari appeared in the world over 120 years later, the teachings of Ventari upon that tablet became an integral part of Savari cultures and beliefs. Further north in Maguma, the peaceful tribe of the Maguma had settlements found within the wastes and knew nothing about Ventari and the Savari. It was not until the Savari firstborn Win had made contact with the Maguma tribe and befriended them. However, 2 other Savari firstborns known as Kaith and Fallon believed that Win knew information about who the Savari really were and sought her for answers. As they followed Win's steps north and discovered her with this tribe, Fallon and Kaith entered the camp to speak with their sister. Kaith was speaking with a centaur inside of a tent when suddenly Fallon and several of her loyal friends began attacking the centaurs. A battle broke out where Kaith reluctantly joined Fallon in slaughtering the centaurs while Win pleaded them to stop. Kaith, Fallon, and their friends worked their way through the entire centaur camp, slaughtering every single one of them before eventually chasing after Win once again. With this village of the Maguma centaurs having been wiped out, the only remaining home left for the Maguma is located in the region known as Drytop, where the Meguma tribe continues to hold their peaceful tenets and provides refuge for the Zephyrites whose ship crashed in the region, and for any other adventurer who makes their way through this region of the world. While the Meguma tribe had separated themselves from the Hrathi had continued their battles against the humans. Over 1,000 years ago, the Hrathi, Tamini, and Modnir tribes existed within their respective region of the world. However, in the year 300 after Exodus, the Kingdom of Elona colonized the region of Kryta and began to build up a population. In the year 358 after Exodus, the newfound Kryta gained their independence and became the youngest of the human nations. During this time and in the years following, these Centaur tribes were displaced from their lands as the humans built up their settlements and expanded into the Meguma jungle and the Shiver Peak mountains. The Centaurs were not able to form a resistance against the humans, and the various tribes were isolated from each other and struggled to survive. In the year 1072 after Exodus, the Hrathi and Modnir tribes convened to form an alliance between each other in order to fight against the humans who had taken their land centuries prior, but this meeting was stopped by the Shining Blade, who had guerrilla forces throughout the Meguma jungle in their war against the White Mantle. During this time, the Centaurs continuously faced defeat and losses, such as how the Modnir were nearly wiped out by humans and Norn in the Shiver Peaks. It was not until 200 years later in which the scattered Modnir tribes were able to reunite. Ogoth the Mighty, also known as Modnir Ogoth, was an incredibly powerful centaur of the Modnir tribe, who rose to become the war king of the Modnir tribe and helped bring them back to strength. He ruled through tyranny and fear, where he did not allow any dissent or betrayals within his tribe, instantly killing any centaur who should come up with the idea to act against him. With the Modnir tribe under his grasp and re-strengthened, he set out to dominate the other two tribes of the Hrathi and Tamini, which he did so successfully. The three tribes were able to unite under the newfound leadership of Ogoth, and a new Centaur alliance was born. Ogoth, through his hatred of the humans and Norn, rallied his alliance together to wage war upon the humans and the Norn who had killed his ancestors and taken their land. The new alliance attacked the various different human settlements of Kryta while establishing camps themselves within the humans' lands. Each Centaur tribe contributed much to their cause, where the Modnir held power over the alliance and directed their conflict, where the Tamini are clever and are often used as foot soldiers in the Centaur army, being seen predominantly on the front lines of various conflicts, and lastly the Hrathi, who are the biggest of the three tribes and as such are the tribe that make up the bulk of the alliance's armies. In addition to that, they are intelligent scholars and capable engineers, where they are able to create a variety of siege weapons that the alliance uses against the humans. With their powers combined under the leadership of Ogoth, the Centaurs have become an incredibly powerful force. The nation of Kryta was already struggling with many other issues, and the war against the Centaurs only weakened the nation further. The Centaurs were able to claim many victories and establish themselves within Kryta, as is demonstrated by the large presence of Centaurs and the existence of their well-fortified camps. Alongside their battle prowess, the Centaurs were also able to demonstrate a high level of strategy and diplomacy, where the Centaurs were able to form alliances and strategize with various other factions who would also seek harm to Kryta, such as the White Mantle and the Human Bandits. In addition to that, there were also reports that the Centaurs had been meeting with the Flame Legion, but not much came from those meetings. In addition to all this, the Captain's Council of Lion's Arch were able to form a treaty with the Centaur leadership, where the hostilities between the Lion's Guard and the Centaurs would end, where the city of Lion's Arch and the various Lion Guard havens would be a safe place for travelers and merchants in Kryta, but that the Lion Guard would not be able to support Seraph and Kryta in the war against the Centaurs. This pact was tenuous, as neither side trusted each other, but the treaty was held nonetheless. The Seraph and Centaurs were able to trade blows and victories with each other, but the occurrence of the war meant that many forces on each side died, including many human civilians who were slaughtered, displaced, or taken prisoner by the Centaurs. The Centaurs were able to rampage through human territory and even threatened the capital Kryta, Divinity's Reach itself. In the year 1325 after Exodus, Centaur forces were able to advance through Kryta and make it to the village of Shamor on the outskirts of Divinity's Reach. There, the Centaur forces stormed the town, but were met by the forces of the Seraph, led by the Seraph captain Logan Thackeray. There, the Seraph were able to rally their forces and also arm a militia group of civilians to defend the town. The Seraph, as well as the human who would become known as the Hero of Shamor, drove the Centaurs out of Shamor and further into Queensdale, defeating a Modnir High Sage and a giant earth elemental that he had summoned along the way. With Shaemore being saved, the Seraph and various adventurers in Teria would be able to begin a long counteroffensive against the Centaur forces that eventually turned the tide of battle. All across the lands of Kryda, the Seraph were able to take back their land, destroy Centaur encampments, and free Krydans. The Seraph forces pushed through Queensdale, into Kessex Hills, into Gindaran Fields, and eventually into the Hrathi hinterlands, fighting large-scale battles to protect human towns while also launching offensives against Centaur wool camps. The lands of the Hrathi hinterlands, while having multiple human settlements, was predominantly controlled by the Centaurs. The area itself has seen a history of warfare, as the Charr marched through these lands to attack Kryta centuries prior, and the Centaurs had come through here, destroying Krytan villages and taking the land for themselves. But the Seraph forces had pushed the Centaurs into the hinterlands and continued their offensive against them. The entire region of the hinterlands was a full-blown war zone as Seraph and Centaur forces clashed against the land, but over time, the Seraph was able to claim victory time and time again and push the Centaurs back even further. Over time, the Seraph were able to push the Centaurs into the Modnir Gorge, which housed the Warg Keen's great camp, the location where Ogoth and the Centaur leadership was located and strategized the war against the humans and Norn. As Seraph forces were able to breach the camp, they came face to face with Ogoth the Modnir.
I'll bury you beneath the weight of my fury.
The great Warg Keen of the Centaurs engaged the Seraph in battle, summoning war beasts to fight the human forces.
No, this is not how it will be. You will pay. Answer this, hummingbirds. How does one fight the wind?
As well as a giant earth elemental similar to the one that attacked Shaemore.
Enough of this. I'll deal with you myself. I'll crush your fragile bones with a flick of my mind.
But the Seraph forces, alongside the adventurers of Teria, were able to best Ogoth and strike him down and break the Centaur forces. With the defeat of Ogoth and the offensive against him, the Seraph were able to reclaim much of Kryda and also destabilize the Centaur forces. But the threat of the Centaurs against humanity is not at an end. Many Modnir overlords remain to force the Hrathian Tamini to continue skirmishes against the humans. While many Centaurs believe that this will be the end of their race, any dissenting Centaurs are ignored, exiled, or killed. And so, despite the Centaurs being weakened, the war continues. Skirmishes occur throughout Kryda, and the Centaurs continue to work to take back their lands. The only other major event occurring in the Centaur War following the defeat of Ogoth is a collaboration between a re-emerged White Mantle who provided the Hrathi with bloodstone dust to empower them to have the Hrathi help in the White Mantle's attack against Divinity's Reach, but that too failed. The future of the Centaurs is bleak. The Veiled Runner and Losari are extinct. The peaceful Maguma are a small tribe that has diminished in recent years, but are unlikely to disappear or cause any conflicts in the future. And then the alliance between the Modnir, Hrathi, and Tamini has caused great devastation to their people. The question for their tribes in the future is if they shall continue their war against Kryda and be all but exterminated, reunite and regrow their powers to take over Kryda, or seek peace and coexistence like that of the Maguma. I hope you all enjoyed watching this lore and story video about Centaurs and Guild Wars 2. I really enjoy making lore videos and I hope to continue making them in the future alongside all of the other content I make as well. If you want to support my channel and this series, subscribe to let me know that you want to see more lore videos in the future. Have a good one.